welcome for another Holistic Creative Chat. I am super excited to welcome back, I think this is my first repeat guest because Andrea was one of my first guests the first year I ran this a couple years ago as a video series. So our guest today is Andrea Schroeder. She's a mentor, she's a founder of the very popular Creative Dream Incubator, and Andrea is somebody who lives and works with creatively and daily and as a practitioner is how I kind of think of it, of this connection between creativity and spirituality. And thank you for being here, Andrea.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I love being here.
Yeah.
I love hanging out with you. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And Andrea also, it lined up in the stars and the timing, and I was super excited that it worked out this year. Andrea is also one of our featured teachers for Spectrum 2016 this year. I've seen her workshop offering. It's fantastic. It's called Heartbeat. So I'm super excited you'll be joining the participants in that program this year as well. So, yay.
It'll be so fun.
So I want to dive in with there's a question I'm bringing to everybody this year, and I'm asking more for a personal story this year, maybe not so much from like your work as a mentor or teacher, but something from your personal practice where you have experienced firsthand the connection between creativity and healing.
Oh gosh. That's funny when you asked it, I was like, oh no, am I going to have an answer? And then when you said creativity and healing, it's just like, whoa.
Which one? That's how I
am. I was just sharing with you earlier about how I'm in this relationship after having been single for over 10 years. And now I'm in like a really, really good relationship for about a year. And no matter how well it's going, it's a big adjustment. And so I keep coming up against all of this stuff that I wasn't aware of because when I was single and living by myself, it's like I didn't have to, it's like I didn't come up against my comfort zone or I didn't, it's just in a lot of ways I find just a lot easier to be alone. And so having someone else in my life, I'm constantly coming up against fears and wounds in me, like places where I'm worried that I'm not lovable or I'm not enough as I am. And talking to him about that is always really good, and that's really important. But I've also found in this time that having my creative practice, that's like key. I mean, being able to take my feelings and express them in color and pattern and in ways that don't make sense, like bypassing the mind and bypassing having to explain it to another person in a way that makes sense, because you kind of censor and change it when you do that. And so just having that place where I can just creatively express how I'm feeling and then look at it and kind of see it outside of me. I don't even have words to explain.
It's beautifully put.
How much that helps.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that too. And in my own marriage, we're both artists, and we both require a lot of alone time and space, and we kind of know that about each other too, but we're still in relationship and we still live together. And so having that dialogue, yes, with the partner, like you said, is so helpful and supportive and important, and having a space of your own to process it beyond the words, beyond that verbal sort of language and the thinking mind. Yeah, beautifully put. Makes so much sense to me. And also, I love the way you brought in something that's presently happening, and rather than like sometimes we go to a story of something we feel like maybe we've moved through a little bit or come out the other side of. And I think that's beautiful, because that is, that's what both you and I know about the process, is that it's a process and it's always ongoing. And we want to have it there through the times of transition, which really are the times always, right?
It's called life.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for sharing that. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you also, you've been doing, how many years have you had the Creative Dream Incubator going now?
Oh, I don't actually know. I know that it's been my full-time job for over 5 years.
That's excellent.
And I think it was 2 or 3 years before that.
Okay.
7 or 8 years.
Beautiful. So you've been doing this a long time and you've worked with a lot of people. And so I wondered if you could share a couple of things, maybe it's a couple of questions that you receive very frequently. I know, like in my experience, there's like a few core questions that people tend to ask me about creative practice and process. Or is there anything like that that comes up for you, or something that is either like a blocking point for people when they're looking at how to be true to their dreams or how to activate the dreams in their life? What is sort of a common thread that you find yourself addressing frequently?
Yeah, the big one, the one that comes up the most for me is people not having a dream or not knowing what their dream is. Worrying that that means that they don't have a dream and that there's nothing more for them than their current situation. And those emails always come to me. First, they start with, I don't know what my dream is. I don't have a dream. And then they go on to say, what I really want is to feel better about myself. What I really want is to like trust my creativity. What I really want is to feel more empowered, right? And so it's like they're going on to name their dream, but there's this part of them that has decided that that's not worthy of being called a dream. So this idea that I want to feel happier in my life, but that's not a dream. I mean, a dream is like starting a business, or a dream is something like buying your dream house, or but just that idea that what we want, what we truly desire, like that's not enough. That there's supposed to be more.
Yeah.
And
I have literally like chills on my arms because I was just writing about this morning, Andrea. The way the way you answered that, and it's so true that. And I see it. I see it in myself. I see it in the women I work with. It's I don't know what I want. Da, 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 where they've listed out what they want, but they no longer see it that way. Like they've put on a different filter for what the story they're telling in that. Whereas like sometimes that's where a mentor can be very helpful, or just an outside person looking in can go, well, I feel like you just told me what you wanted. And it's enough, just like you said. And I love too how I feel like what you're pointing at also is a huge piece about honoring the simplicity of our desires and our longings rather than desires even. So when we can really like kind of pare it down, it doesn't have to be this big thing. We begin to see something richer. So,
yeah, like almost sometimes the dream becomes a job or like a to do.
yes.
And it comes also about how it looks on the outside so that other people will see that this is a dream and will respect it.
Mm.
And I think it all comes down to like having that respect for your own desires and having that respect for your heart and what it really wants right now.
Yeah. And I love that too, like what you said about having that idea that, people have to somehow see it, that there has to be this standard of measurement externally. And so sometimes that becomes a piece, like really redefining what is the measurement of this dream, or realizing this dream, or seeing this dream already being realized, within myself, and that being the stopping point, of measurement. Yeah.
It's so much richer, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, I love that you just said that. It just cracked me up because I was like saying, but I don't know. That just blew me away. Good job. So I feel like I have seen you say a few things or write a few things. I don't know if it was on Instagram or your blog, or I don't know where exactly, but I've picked up on something that you're doing a little bit more this year, and I wondered if you could speak to it because it's a process you're in, and it has to do with structure. So, and I can't really exactly remember, and I could be misinterpreting it, but I feel like maybe you've done this with like your structure for your business and your schedule and your day to day. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to this idea of bringing structure or groundedness to following your dreams or keeping the momentum for them flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is exactly the way you describe it is exactly what I'm working on this year.
Mm.
And I guess I feel like before I even say that, I want to say the last 3 years, I have not had that structure, and I have not really been pushing myself, and I've been focusing more on just being in tune with what I want, and that's a very gentler kind of way of going. And I just wanted to say that to say. Um, just that this way that I'm doing of stretching myself isn't the way.
Yeah.
Like, because so much of our world tells us that we're supposed to do that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like I needed to go off in the other direction in order to give myself space for that, so that I wasn't coming from that pushy place. So some of it is learning for me what's the difference between pushing and stretching. Because I definitely had like a strong heart desire to stretch and to it's funny, like I let my like the phrase, like I let myself off the hook a lot, right? When it comes to self care and maybe I want to take a day off, so I do, and that kind of thing, and that's important. But I think just for me personally, I get caught up in a thing where then I start believing what my inner critics tell me about how much is possible for me to do. And I have a lot of stories about overwhelm. I'm a very sensitive person, very introverted. I need lots of quiet rest time. But I think my inner critic hides in some of those stories and tells me that my possibilities are smaller than they are.
Mm.
And there's this other like creative, alive part of me that's like, no, like I want to do more. I want to create more. So it isn't about pushing myself to achieve, but it's about stretching myself to create more of what I want to create. Because I noticed last year there were things I wanted to create in my business that I didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to come to the end of this year and feel that same way. I don't want to push myself to it, but I want to like see how much I can stretch.
Mm.
So yeah, so I am really getting every Monday journaling about it, looking at what my like what the yearly goals are, and so how that breaks down, like trying to be more structured in it while still giving myself lots of time for my practice and for following where I'm at, like emotionally and creatively. So trying to bring it all together.
I love that because what we're really talking about on some level is discipline, and yet you've come at it with this very compassionate angle. I love that idea of looking at it as stretching rather than pushing,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. And I'm living it myself too. It's a constant, like I think it's a constant dance. Like
Yeah.
every year, every 6 months, I'm shifting things a little to try to find that rhythm and structure that works for me at the time. And yeah, so that's
You know,
great.
I don't think we really find out what we're capable of unless we do stretch ourselves.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So my next question is one I did not have planned, but I'm wondering if you could speak about this beautiful dream compass you have behind you.
Oh,
Because okay, well, and I'm gonna jump into that a little bit to let everybody know that you take beautiful pictures of your loft, and your loft is a big part of you living and realizing your dreams. And
mhm.
it's so much color in your space. It's so lively and beautiful. So let me backtrack. We'll come back to the compass, and I want to ask you one other thing. I want to ask you about what you sense or feel to be true, at least for you, about the importance of environment for nurturing your creative process.
Oh my God. So important. I don't know that that's true for everyone. For me, it's just so important. And like my intuition led me to this place. I didn't feel ready to move or to buy a new place or anything, and my intuition said, "No, no, this is what you need." And ever since I moved in, it's like, "Holy crap, this is what I needed." Just having it's really sunny, it's really open, everything's modern. Also, I had to get rid of stuff. I don't have any closets, so I had to get rid of a lot of things in order to move in. And I had been in my old house like 7 years, and I had all these closets full of stuff I never used. And so just noticing that all that stuff in my environment, even though I couldn't see it, it's still there, right? So
Yeah.
there's that energy of like staleness, stale stuff, right? So just having the freshness, not having a lot of stuff, being very minimalist, and then being very conscious about what I do have, like what things I do have with me here, and how do they make me feel. So all of that stuff, and just now, of course, other people. I mean, I was just visiting Chris Zidell from Creative
Mm-hmm.
Juices Arts. She has stuff everywhere in her house.
I've heard that about
Just
her.
like
That
altar,
it's
like altar,
awesome. Like,
altar. Yeah, it's
yeah.
like a celebration of creativity and stuff, right? And that suits her, right? And this more minimalist, like spaciousness suits me. And maybe at different times we need different things, but I am amazed by how healing and empowering it feels for me to follow that,
Mm-hmm.
what I need, and then to create that environment for myself. I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah, I
And it
love
was
that.
scary.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think it's a really important topic. And well, I always go back to these things I learned about healing as a nurse. And one of the things that the nursing profession brought into healthcare was this idea about how important environment is to healing in general. And like you're saying, that can be different for everybody. Those needs can be certainly different. And I think like what stands out to me sometimes is that question of, yes, how does it make me feel? And also the question of, what am I actually engaging with? And what is just hanging around?
Yeah.
You know,
Oh
like
my
what has
God.
already had its time, what has run its course, kind of thing. And so I think that's a really fun idea in an area like to explore for people with creative practice. I know it is for me, and yeah, there's so much to it. So thank you for sharing that, and for always sharing the really gorgeous, beautiful, inspiring pictures of your space as part of what you do for people. Um, I know it always gives me a little sense of hope, and I love the color. So yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the dream compass.
Um, yeah, that's a thing. So most of my creative practice happens in my journal,
Hmm.
and it's quite small. And really, one day I just felt like, no, I want to do something big. And I have these rolls of paper, and I just rolled it out on the floor. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I just kind of started, and just that intuitive creative process, right? And it was just like I did a big circle because I do lots of mandalas. And then I was like, oh, like I wanted to divide it up. And then it was like I wanted to call in all of these qualities. And these were the qualities that I wanted to work with in my practice that day. But then as I looked at it, I was like, oh no, these are basically the qualities. Like you need them for all dreams, right?
Yeah.
And then I was so glad that I had done it big and that I could put it up to remind me for the times when I'm forgetting that these are the qualities that I need to connect with, right? So, um, yeah, I like that. I mean, for the most part, I like to keep my practice in my journal and kind of as a private thing for me, but then to have once in a while do things that are going to be out in my environment and remind me of that. That's
And
really cool. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I love that you call it your compass. And I did something similar once, and I called it a map, and it was large, and and I also the what I see on yours, and what I find to be true when I do work around that too, around the qualities and things I want in my life, is that they tend to be a blending with like values, our core values.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, thank you for sharing about that. All right. So that is really, let me look at my little notes here. I made some little notes. Oh, I know, I did want to ask you this, and this is based off of a thing that you recently did, so I'm hoping it's fresh in your mind. But just as a closing offering, can you offer like 1 to 3 tips for facing resistance? Because that comes up across the board too, I
Oh my
think.
God, does it ever? Um, all right. So the first thing um, that I guess it's something that I've been seeing a lot, and it's a little bit of a pet peeve about resistance is people kind of making a joke out of it. And it seems harmless enough, but usually when you're making a joke out of resistance, it's because you're wanting to separate yourself from it and distance yourself from it. So it's like you make fun of it. It's like, oh, it's not that bad, or oh, there's something wrong with me for letting it boss me around, or whatever. And um, it bugs me to see people do that because making jokes of it or trying to separate yourself from it actually um, plays into what resistance wants, which is for you to not do the work, right? Because you'll stay far away from starting whatever it is that resistance is trying to stop you from starting. And the reason why people tend to try to make jokes or make light of it like that is because resistance is so scary.
So it's kind of like resisting the resistance too.
Yeah, yeah, that's what. Yeah,
It's true, I do it all the time.
well, me too. And it's like, of course you will, because resistance is uncomfortable. It's either really uncomfortable or sometimes it gets terrifying
Yeah.
and scary, and it can hold, all of our past failures and all of that stuff. And sometimes we have to um, feel all of that, sometimes, always.
Yeah.
In order to work through the resistance, like you have to sit with how it feels. You have to
Yeah.
sit with what comes up when you go to begin.
Hmm.
So those are the only things that are in your way. So I guess the tip 2 is to realize that feeling this stuff is the only thing in your way.
Yeah.
It's not like when you try to avoid, or when you resist the resistance, then you start seeing all of these things as obstacles and all the stuff that's in the way. But those aren't obstacles. Those are stories that your resistance is telling you. And so when you sit with your resistance and you see that it's those feelings are the only thing standing between you and making the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, it does. And it builds courage too. Don't you find that? Like when you
Yeah.
let yourself use it as that gateway and face it and do the feelings. Do the feelings, you know.
And yeah, because then you see that there's all this freedom on the other side of the feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And avoiding resistance is never going to lead to that freedom. It's like when you avoid resistance, it's like resistance gets to put this big circle around the map on the place where you want to be, and you don't get to go into that circle.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And yeah, like you said, it builds courage. I mean, the more you do this, the more experience you have, the more you start to be able to trust that you'll survive feeling the feelings and that the resistance is lying because you've made it through and you've done the thing in the past. And so you're going to do it again.
Yeah. And I know I find like pretty much across the board, like that it's never quite as scary or as bad in the way my mind wanted to make it out to be.
No.
And yeah, maybe it's hard, you know, but we can do hard, you know, that's okay. You know, we're built for that.
Yeah.
And we can move through it.
And this is a part of it. Also, I guess the other thing is that people assume that because they have the resistance or because it's scary or uncomfortable, that means that there's something wrong.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is an assumption that comes in. I definitely, like, I work with resistance and have for a long, long time consciously. But that comes, you know, but that comes up all the time. Like, oh, you know, maybe it's not in my cards, you know, maybe I'm not supposed to.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the mind trick of it.
Resistance is so sneaky.
Yeah.
Like it will come up with any reason to keep you from the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you, Andrea. So now I just want to ask you if you have anything. Well, we're going to put a link to your website below, but if you have anything coming up, and I believe I saw that you do, that you would like to share with people coming up at any point this year, that you would just like to let people know.
Sure. Actually, just today opened up registration for my new class, which is Creative with Money. And everything we're saying about resistance, that comes up a lot in people's relationships with money and just how we look at it, how we use it, what we think is possible with it. So it's that kind of creative healing work around our relationship with money. It's one of my favorite classes. I think it's really, really juicy to look at.
It looks really good.
It's just like we use money every day, so why not be like empowered and creative about it? So yeah, so I'm really excited about that one.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Andrea, again for being here.
Thank you. Hey, this was really, really fun to chat with you.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for listening in.